I'm not usually one to complain, but that night felt like some cruel cosmic joke was being played on me. Let me paint the picture. I was driving home from work, utterly exhausted, dressed in my usual button-up shirt and slacks, because corporate life doesn't believe in casual Fridays. The clock read 9:47 p.m., and all I could think about was collapsing onto my couch and zoning out with whatever mindless TV show was on. The streets were eerily quiet, the kind of night where even the streetlights seemed dimmer, and the shadows on the sidewalk felt almost watchful. I was halfway home when I noticed headlights in my rearview mirror. Too bright, too close. Then suddenly, red and blue lights flashed. I sighed, pulling over to the side, my mind racing. Did I miss a stop sign? Was I speeding? No way. I had the cleanest record in town. Still, I rolled down my window, keeping my hands firmly on the wheel like I was in a driving safety tutorial. Two officers approached. The first, a sergeant named Bradley Harris, had a look like I'd just stolen his grandmother's purse. Behind him was Officer Michael Randall, a linebacker of a man who moved with a theatrical flair. Harris shone his flashlight straight into my eyes. "Evening, sir. License and registration," he ordered, his voice sharp as a razor. I handed over my documents, keeping my tone respectful. "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" "Oh, a big one," Harris replied without explaining. Instead, he gave Randall a subtle nod. The next thing I knew, Randall was circling my car like a predator stalking prey. Something felt off. My car was spotless, and I had nothing to hide. But these guys were acting like I had just pulled off a major heist. Then it happened. Randall popped my trunk without asking. No warrant, no permission, just flipping it open like he had every right. My stomach twisted as he suddenly called out, "Well, well, well. What do we have here?" Harris yanked me out of the car roughly. The next thing I knew, I was standing in the cold, my hands cuffed behind my back, as they pulled out a backpack I had never seen before. Inside, wads of cash and a battered gun. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, staring at the bag like it was a ticking bomb. Harris smirked. "That's what we're going to figure out back at the station." "Wait, hold on! That's not mine!" I shouted, panic creeping into my voice. My heart pounded so hard I was sure they could hear it. But they didn't care. They were too busy high-fiving like they just hit the jackpot. Randall chuckled. "Yeah, sure, buddy. That's what they all say." They shoved me into the back of their cruiser, which reeked of bad decisions and worse intentions. As they drove, I could hear them joking up front. "Think he'll crack in the first hour?" Randall asked. "Please," Harris scoffed. "Guys like him fold before we even start the paperwork." Guys like me. I knew exactly what that meant. The ride felt endless. When we finally arrived, I was dragged into a classic interrogation room. Cold metal table, flickering fluorescent light, the whole cliché. Harris leaned in, playing the role of a bad cop, except there was no good cop here. "Why don't you save us some time and tell us what you were doing near the bank tonight?" he asked, voice dripping with fake patience. "I wasn't near any bank. I was at work. Call my boss, check the cameras. Do whatever you need to. That bag isn't mine," I snapped. Randall grinned like he'd been waiting for this. "See, the thing is, your fingerprints are all over that gun, so either you confess now, or we let the evidence do the talking." My fingerprints? That was impossible. My mind reeled. Had they planted them? When? How? "You're lying," I whispered, my voice cracking. Harris slammed his hand on the table, making me jump. "Watch your tone, kid. You're in no position to call anyone a liar." For hours they grilled me, twisting my words, throwing accusations, trying to break me. But I held firm. The angrier they got, the clearer it became. They weren't looking for the truth. They just wanted a confession. By the time they tossed me into a holding cell, it was past midnight. The cell smelled like sweat and despair. Some guy in the corner hummed an off-key tune. I slumped onto the bench, my head in my hands, trying to process what had just happened. This couldn't be real. I didn't do anything. And yet here I was, framed, trapped. And worst of all, nobody was coming to save me. Not tonight. The next morning they dragged me out again, treating me like I was the star of some sick joke. Harris and Randall stood there, smug as ever. "Ready to come clean?" Harris asked, leaning back like he owned the place. Come clean about what? I shot back. You're the ones playing dirty. Randall chuckled. Cute. Keep that attitude up, and we'll make sure the judge sees just how dangerous you are. More fabricated witness statements, blurry security footage, and of course that planted gun. By the time I met my court-appointed lawyer, a guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, I had zero faith in the system. You're facing serious charges, he muttered, flipping through my file. No kidding, I snapped. How about helping me prove I didn't do it? He barely looked up. Even he didn't seem convinced. By the time I was back in my cell, the weight of it all started crushing me. The media was already running wild with the story, my face plastered on every screen. Suspected bank robber in custody. The other guys in the cell stared. One finally asked, So, you the guy who hit the bank? Do I look like I robbed a damn bank? I shot back. But even I didn't sound convincing anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with one burning thought. If I didn't figure something out, these cops were going to win. The court date arrived fast, and stepping into that courtroom felt like walking into a lion's den. Harris and Randall sat there smug as ever, while the prosecutor painted me as a mastermind criminal. Then my lawyer did something unexpected. He presented time-stamped footage from my office, proof that I was at work during the supposed crime. Harris barely blinked. Could have had an accomplice, he said coolly. I snapped. You're lying. The judge banged the gavel. My lawyer shot me a warning look. Sit down or we're both screwed. Then came the turning point. My lawyer pulled me aside. I have an idea, he whispered, but it's risky. At this point, risky was all I had. The next day in court, my lawyer played his trump card, traffic cam footage from the night of my arrest. The courtroom fell silent as it showed Randall casually placing the bag in my trunk. Harris jumped up. This is fake! Edited! Sit down, the judge snapped, furious. But I wasn't done. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a badge, and held it up. For the record, I said, locking eyes with Harris, I'm Agent James Miller, CIA, and I've been investigating corruption like yours for months. The room exploded. Harris and Randall turned pale. The prosecutor fumbled for words, but it was too late. The judge ordered their immediate arrest for perjury, evidence tampering, and more. When I walked out of that courtroom, the media swarmed me. How does it feel to take down corrupt cops? Someone shouted. I just grinned. Feels like justice. Then I kept walking. After all, my work wasn't done. Corrupt cops don't catch themselves.